Well, greetings, church family. Good to see all of you this morning. I know we're all glad to have the ladies back from this weekend, especially those of us who were really hungry. I'm especially glad to have regular meals. So, well, the days are marching onward into the future. And we need to heed Paul's instructions in Ephesians 5:16 to make the most of the time. Remember, we talked about that. Pointed that out before. It doesn't mean to be better schedulers or time managers, not in the sense of being more efficient within, a 24-hour constraint. It means to make the best use of the current opportunity we have to shed our focus on ourselves and focus on God. So the days, Paul says, or the times in which we live are evil. We must not be. Well, speaking of time, our communion fellowship meal, we keep reminding you because it's coming up, it's rapidly approaching. In fact, it's so close, it's going to happen next weekend. That's pretty quick. So if you haven't given it much thought yet, I encourage you to do so. So next Sunday is the service. It'll look a lot like the other times we've done it, but not exactly. So this one's going to be a potluck. That means you have to bring food. So if you show up like last couple of times we did it, expecting to get fed, well, hopefully you brought something with you so you can eat it. So the basic format's going to be about the same. It's not going to change. If you don't bring any food, it's going to have a significant impact on the quality of the overall experience. But hopefully we'll all remember. If you haven't already done so, please get with Teddy or Glenda, Jody, I don't know whoever else is in the loop on that, to volunteer. So share the burden of the planning and the execution of it. Maximum participation means maximum potential for a wonderful communion. And hopefully we'll be thinking about it that way. Have you ever noticed that the prefix of a word can change its meaning completely? You take the two prefixes in and dis. When you add in to the front of a word like franchise, right, you get enfranchise. And that just means to set somebody free or people free, like from slavery. So it's to endow them with a franchise, such as admitting them to privileges of a citizenship, the right to suffrage, to admit somebody to political privileges and rights. So when you enfranchise people, you endow them with freedom, with the rights and privileges associated with whatever it is that they're being enfranchised with. When you allow, for example, people to voice their opinion without repercussions, freedom of speech, right? That's enfranchising people. Voting as citizens, unhindered. You enfranchise them with the basic rights allowed to all citizens. So pretty simple, right? We got that one. Just a simple little en says that you're infusing that. But if you add the word dis to the front of enfranchise, you're doing the opposite. To disenfranchise somebody is to deny rights. It's denying them privileges. Enfranchise sets people free. Disenfranchise enslaves them. Infuses, adds, and gives. Dis revokes, takes away, denies. Yet it's the same root word. We'll take the word trust. To entrust someone means you place trust in them. You believe in them. You have confidence in them. But if you take the word in off and replace it with the word dis, you get something entirely different. To distrust someone means to have a lack or complete absence of trust. It means you have no confidence. Maybe you're even suspicious of them. It's almost impossible to have confidence in someone that you distrust unless your confidence is that they're going to fail. So if you're confident they're going to fail, then the distrust communicates that. When someone entrusted with a responsibility fails to live up to your expectations, You lose confidence in them. The trust is broken. They're now distrusted. It's hard to win back trust when trust has been dissed. Right? That's what that means. En is a very useful and descriptive prefix. Basically, it means in or within something. The idea of infusing something into something or within something. The way we experience the joy of an experience is to enjoy. Joy is infused to the experience. To acquire knowledge of something profound is to be enlightened. Gaining knowledge infuses light. If you're extremely motivated, you may be said to be enthusiastic. If you don't have something or enough of something, in comes in pretty handy. It means that something can be infused into you or your life or your experience, or you can have more of what you already have. It can be enlarged. So when you use in, we're talking about something that adds, something that builds up, something that increases. The hope, the goal is that by getting something into something, or more of something into something that it already has, that in a way that makes it better, or more effective, more efficient, more desirable. We will have improved it or sustained it or built it up, increased it, magnified it, even matured it. If you want someone to succeed or improve in a way that brings maximum benefit to all concerned, you in them, right? Whatever it is that person needs. If you attempt to diss whatever it is that person needs, no matter what your intentions might otherwise be, you're more likely to achieve the opposite. Just one example. If you want your vehicle to function, to go down the road, or off-road, and take you wherever it is that you want to go, you have to put gas in the tank. Well, after just until 2035, then you have to put electricity in the battery. Well, that's an example of in. Enjoy your trip. But if you discharge the contents of the fuel tank or discharge the battery, you're not going anywhere. Dis takes away. It hurts. It frustrates. It destroys. It distracts. It disqualifies. In adds. It provides. If you haven't put it together yet, let me just say that in is generally a good thing. Dis, not so much. Sometimes context provides an exception or two, maybe, but this is generally the way it works. Well, there's a Bible word that comes up now and then, quite often, actually. It's very relevant to this discussion. It comes in both forms, in and dis. Encouragement and discouragement. What both words have in common is the word courage. We know what courage is, right? Don't we know what courage is? When you're fearless, confident, brave, you have courage. Your capacity to endure hardships and setbacks and challenges is highly functional when you're encouraged. But those two words are worlds apart in meaning from one another. The Bible says a lot about both, but it only tells us to do one and never to do the other. It's hard to emphasize strongly enough how important this is, this difference. But how? Maybe a few examples can help enlighten us. Okay, it's well known, or at least it should be well known, that children respond much more positively to encouragement than discouragement. Lots of studies tell us that children who learn criticism tend to have more trouble adjusting to life than children who don't. When all they hear is what they do wrong, how they fail at this or that, they learn to conform to what they see as expected behavior. How many times have you heard a child say something along the lines of, well, all they ever notice is when I mess up, so I might as well just go ahead and mess up. Get it over with. You can't ignore a problem in behavior and judgment with your kids. But if the majority of the attention you give goes toward the problem and their deficiencies, how they fall short, they'll learn to minimize and discount anything they might do right. So even when they do well, it doesn't mean anything because they think that you think they're no good. Those children who receive primarily negative attention focused on what they're doing or saying that's wrong will become discouraged at some point. They have a marked lack of objectivity and have difficulty stepping outside that interaction and cannot see the bigger picture. They only see the defectiveness in themselves and what you're pointing out. Criticism is a lot easier than praise. Or is it? Well, we might think so because it appears to come more naturally than praise does. That's why Paul says in Ephesians 6:4, right? Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. That is not telling them to be focused on their problems and deficiencies. It's telling them not to. Children who learn discouragement are much more susceptible to depression and other mental and emotional ailments. They're more likely to rebel and act out. If they don't find positive reinforcement from an authority figure during their development, they're many times more likely to end up in trouble, with authorities, to break the law, end up in jail. Discouragement goes a long way toward explaining a lot of problems. I know you've seen the impact of discouragement in the workplace. Who hasn't had a boss or a supervisor or a manager who is constantly harping on what you're doing wrong? Have you ever had that experience? If all your employees hear from you is how far short they fall below the standard, how terrible their best efforts are, guess what you'll never get out of them? Their best efforts. They'll do the bare minimum to keep you off their backs, but will not be motivated to excel or take the initiative. Ultimately, they may even take a lower paying job somewhere else where they get treated better. I've seen it in soldiers so many times when the chain of command is abusive and demanding and very stingy to give recognition. They get underachievers who simply bide their time until either they get reassigned or you get reassigned. Do you remember seeing that poem? It's been around a long time. Children Learn What They Live by Dorothy Lou Nolte. Anybody remember seeing that? I mention it here because it applies to anyone. I had a command sergeant major who had this blown up on a poster on his office wall. Only his said, instead of child, it said soldier. Just put anyone there, and it's still true. Child, soldier, employee, spouse, and it's still true. The first 4 lines there should be done extremely sparingly, preferably not at all. The rest should be done lavishly, over the top, out of proportion to reality. We should take Paul's words in Philippians 4 to heart and obsessively focus on what can be found that is good and lovely and just and commendable. All our efforts should be focused on building up one another in and not tearing down. Well, what about ministers and church leaders? Did you know that in our times in America, We're facing a minister shortage. Did y'all know that? Like no other time in our history, especially here in the Pacific Northwest. A lot of reasons are given for it. Money's one. A lot of guys are strapped with student loans and other obligations, and few of them are able to get ahead or stay ahead. Money is a much bigger issue than you may think. The smaller the congregation, the less likely it is to be able to pay a living wage. And so it's really hard for somebody to come to a small work and try to build it up. I can tell you from personal experience that Teddy and I struggled severely for years when we were starting out. We always had way too much month left at the end of our money, as they say sometimes. For a while, we had to play a shell game. Ever had to do that? Every month you decide which bill you're going to underpay or not pay at all, just so you can make it through the next month. Remember those days? Over and over. Sometimes the ends didn't meet at all. If I hadn't gone back in the Army as a chaplain, we probably would have been forced out of ministry just because we couldn't afford to eat. For some ministers, it's burnout. They've been slogging along for so long, they just get wore out. A lot feel isolated, burdened, depressed. And if you dig a little into that and ask what's behind it, there's a certain word that begins to emerge. And this is huge. It's huge. Probably the biggest reason for ministers leaving the ministry, or otherwise potential ministers deciding not to even try, is that word, discouragement. Well, other words come into play also. There's disappointment, disillusionment, discontent. It's very easy to judge someone struggling with these things and throw stones. That's the easiest thing in the world to do. But we often fail to realize that one of the most common contributing factors causing all this in the first place is people throwing stones. It's discouraging. When it comes to motivating other people, the Bible never says to resort to discouragement. It should go without saying that discouragement itself should be discouraged. If you observe somebody about to make unhealthy or dangerous choices, decisions, well, discouragement comes in pretty handy. You don't want them to do that. If I'm about to step on a landmine, I appreciate people very much discouraging me from doing that. That's a good thing. But even then, it has to be done with tact and respect. It risks sounding like an attack otherwise. You have to mitigate the risk that discouragement poses by supplementing and displacing it with encouragement. But we can't sell short the value of encouragement. Put the lion's share of your time and energy into emphasizing the good, the positive. Sometimes doing that makes discouragement completely unnecessary. Simply encouraging has the power to fix a problem where discouragement rarely does. Sometimes criticism is well-intended. We might even call it constructive. You ever hear that term, constructive criticism? It's just a soft version of the real thing. But if it isn't tempered with encouragement, it may actually end up making things worse, even causing harm that can't be fixed. It's a bridge burner. It's a simple fact that there's something, I don't care who you're talking about, something commendable and positive about every single person you meet. You could focus on that. No matter how hard it is to find it. Sometimes you have to work pretty hard. But there's something commendable about everybody. Why else would Paul present, remember a couple of weeks ago, as a resolution to the problem those two women were having in Philippians, Euodia and Syntyche? Remember that? He used these instructions. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. So we always pull those out of context and we apply it to all kinds of things. But it's directly focused on this problem of these women not getting along. What do they need more than anything else? Peace, because that's what they don't have. The peace of God that passes all understanding. And it continues. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Remember, we saw that word think, it literally means to dwell on something, to obsess on it. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. This all assumes that there is actually something worthy of focusing on. But there's not a word mentioned, not one single word mentioned about the issue that's dividing them. Not a word about who may be the aggressor or a victim. Maybe they were both. Who's right or who's wrong? None of that. Paul clearly wants to discourage the division and the tension and any animosity that might be present. He wants that to stop. But his preferred technique is not in discouraging the people involved, but in encouraging them. Philippians 4, verses 7 through 9 are hands down some of the most encouraging words in the Bible. It's a higher calling. We want to control and compel. I mean, that's natural. But the tools of control and the tools of compulsion are all too often anger, criticism, demanding one's own way, disparaging those who frustrate us. It's the opposite of love, regardless of how well-meaning we think we're being. And without love, we have only hate and division. Where we should have gates, doors, and bridges, we have walls. But God is the God of endurance and encouragement. For whatever was written in former days was written for our instruction, that through endurance and through the encouragement of the scriptures, we might have hope. May the God of endurance and encouragement grant you to live in such harmony with one another in accord with Christ Jesus, that together you may with one voice glorify the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore, welcome one another as Christ has welcomed you for the glory of God. One of the purposes of Scripture is to give us hope. Patient endurance and encouragement of Scripture facilitates that hope. Can you imagine following teaching that only tells us what's wrong with us, how bad we are, how horrible our lives are? Scripture tells the truth about it. It surely does. But it also tells us that we are precious and loved and worthy of God's efforts to save us. Now, that doesn't mean we earn it. God didn't send Jesus into the world to punish us. He did it because he so loved us. We are valuable in the eyes of God. God is the God of endurance and encouragement. His intent is that we be encouragement. Look again at verses 5 and 6. Live in harmony with one another. Glorify God with one voice. It's a call to be a community of encouragement, a fellowship of encouragement, uplifting one another, building one another up. Discouragement cannot get the job done. It can't. So I issued a challenge. Maybe you remember this. For several weeks, it was a couple of years ago, but maybe you remember this. I challenged us not to leave the building without saying something encouraging to at least one person. Do you all remember that? That breaks my heart if you don't, because I said it repeatedly. Encouraging others is encouragement to you because you know you're making a real meaningful difference in the life of someone else by simply doing that. Well, this morning, I'm going to reissue the challenge. You can forget, I guess, if you wish, but I'm issuing the same challenge. By no means is anyone to leave here this morning without encouraging someone with kindness, a blessing, a pat on the back, a hug, a smile. Be sincere. It can be contagious if we make the effort to infect one another. Think about that, with a little encouragement. One of the most important ministries we do around here takes place about once a month on Wednesday nights. Anybody know where I'm going? We do encouragement cards and we send them out. Maybe that doesn't sound very important. Most or all of you have received one. We need to permanently designate at least one Wednesday per month as encouragement card night, and just do it as every month. We need to do that. This was a brainchild of some of the women during the ladies' Bible studies or weekly, and then kind of caught on. Well, maybe you haven't given it a lot of thought, but I can tell you, I've received a card on occasion, and it was just the thing I needed. It was very, very meaningful. I hope the cards I haven't sent one to everyone, but maybe most of you. I hope it's meaningful to you too. It was just the thing I needed. Okay, you don't need a Wednesday night or a group activity or a challenge to do this. You can write a card and send it to someone anytime. You get the whole week. You know what? We have prayer warriors. I don't know if you think that's silly or not, but I'll tell you right now, as far as I'm concerned, that is the single most important ministry in this body, is the prayer warriors. Maybe we need some encouragement warriors. Take up the ministry of sending weekly encouragement cards. Send it to our members, send it to others. You don't need a program or anything like that. All you need is a willing heart and a positive, encouraging word to share. Simple kindness to one another is worth a year of sermons and classes. Have you ever felt that you wanted to do something, do more, be more involved, make a difference? I've personally talked to some of you that said, I want to do something. I just don't know what. Right here in front of you is a concrete, meaningful, even measurable way to do that. Take it on yourself to be a Barnabas. You know, his name means son of encouragement. Be a son of encouragement. Be a daughter of encouragement. This could be your ministry. And you don't need any training or special skill or any resources, nothing structured, nothing like that. All you need, some cards and a pen and a stamp. And I don't want to talk out of turn and commit the church to something, but I'm pretty confident that if this got to cost you some money, the church probably reimburse you for some cards and stamps. You can literally be instrumental in infusing courage into our fellowship. And you could do it right now. You can start immediately. You don't have to even wait. You can do it today. To tell someone that they cannot do well in one area risks communicating to them that they can't do well in anything else. That's the risk. To say they are less than in one aspect risks diminishing them entirely. So think about it. If discouragement can have that much power, the power to crush and destroy, just imagine what the Holy Spirit can do among us with focused encouragement. We could face anything. We could endure anything. This is something you already know how to do, and you do well, and have demonstrated it in so many ways. Let's take it to the next level. What's holding you back? Please join me while we stand and sing.